press the bell icon on the YouTube app and never miss another update.
Hi, hello everyone. Hope all are safe at home and healthy. Well, we would like to discuss the MCQs from split 6. So the split 6, we had one chapter coming from first PU syllabus and one chapter coming from second PU syllabus. So I think all of you have gone through the paper, and I hope this paper was very easy because it consisted of 45 MCQs, very easy to solve, all coming from the textbook, right? So let me start with the discussion of these 45 MCQs, which will help you to attend your competitive exams. So looking at the first question. So the first question is, which of the following represents maximum number of species among global biodiversity? So the two chapters we are going to discuss coming from second PUC chapter is biodiversity and conservation, and one coming from first PU syllabus, that is chemical coordination and integration. So the first questions coming from biodiversity and conservation. So for this question, which of the following represents maximum number of species, that is among the global biodiversity? So biodiversity is all living organisms on this globe, you can call it as, or on this biosphere of the earth, can be called as biodiversity. So among all these, which is the maximum, whether it is algae, whether it is lichens, whether it is mosses and ferns, or whether it is fungi? So the right answer is the maximum number of species is found in fungi. So fungi is having maximum varieties or maximum species in it. And when you look into a pie chart, so maximum number of fungi is seen. Next to it comes the angiosperms. So this is fungi, this is angiosperms. So this is lichens, this part is lichens, this is algae, and here also you have the mosses or the bryophytes, and the ferns or the pteridophytes, along with other plants. So come under this category. So the maximum global diversity present is in the fungi, and the fungi are almost equal to angiosperms plus mammals plus amphibians plus reptiles. Amphibians plus reptiles. So this is almost equal to the global diversity of these organisms. So this fungi, sorry, here it is not angiosperms, it is equal to mammals plus amphibians plus reptiles plus fishes. So the second is angiosperms in its global biodiversity. So among the plants and the animals, so the plants are only 30%. Animals, the biodiversity of animals is almost 70%, and plants is 30%. And among the plants, that is including fungi, angiosperms, bryophytes, pteridophytes, lichens, etc., the fungi are the largest among all these. So 30% of them are plants, and all the 70% are animals, with a greater biodiversity of animals. So moving on to the next question. So among all these, algae, lichens, mosses and ferns, and fungi has got the maximum number of global biodiversity. So moving on to the next question, which one of the following has the highest number of species in nature? So highest number of species. So highest number of species is in animals, And in animals, we have to look into whether there are some animals given over there. Yes, there are animals given over there. The first option is insects, the second is angiosperms, the third is birds, and the fourth is fungi. So the answer is insects. So insects form the highest species in nature. As I told you, 70% of all the biodiversity comprises of animals, and in animals, insects forms the highest number. So we have already studied the various groups of organisms like the various phyla, and in that we have studied arthropodan is the first largest phylum, right? So insects form the highest number of species in nature. So angiosperms almost equal with fungi, and birds are also group of animals. So next to insects coming in animals is the molluscans. So next to molluscans it is crustaceans coming next to it. So this is the order of richness or highest number of species in animals. Next to insects is the crustacean molluscans. Next to molluscans is the crustaceans, which also belongs to arthropodans. So moving on to the next question. Maximum nutritional diversity is found in the group of, so maximum nutritional diversity is found. So nutritional diversity is found in various types of nutrition is obtained by these organisms. So nutritional diversity, we have something like photosynthetic, autotrophic, heterotrophic, chemosynthetic. So all these are different types of nutritional diversity which can be seen maximum type of nutritions can be seen in case of monarans. So monaran, both they are autotrophic and also heterotrophic. In autotrophic, once again, they are photosynthetic and also they are chemosynthetic. And we also have cyanobacterians and archaebacterians, which we have studied like halophiles and also methanogens. We have studied which have got diversified type of nutritions. So all of them, they come under the monarans, and therefore monara has got maximum nutritional diversity. And in heterotrophs also we have the saprophytic bacteria and the parasitic bacteria. So all these are varieties of nutritional diversity that can be observed in monarans. So they form the maximum nutritional diversity in the present group. Next, moving on to the next question. Which one of the following shows maximum genetic diversity in India? So, which has got maximum genetic diversity? So, we have studied about three levels of biodiversity: genetic biodiversity, the ecosystem level biodiversity. So in genetic diversity, species diversity, genetic diversity, species diversity, and ecosystem biodiversity we have. So in the first, that is in the genetic diversity, though organisms belong to the same species, there is still variation found at the level of genes, which is called as genetic diversity. And each species has got number of varieties. The best example I can give you is in dogs. There are varieties of dogs like Dalton is there, Pomeranian is there, German Shepherd is there. Like this, we have varieties of dogs. So just now the mango season is finished. We find different types of mangoes. So all these forms the genetic diversity, and the maximum genetic diversity can be seen in case of rice, which has got nearly 15,000 varieties among the given over here. So here we have species diversity gone almost mango has got nearly 1,000 different varieties of mangoes can be seen, and 32,000 varieties of maize can be seen, and also groundnut there are about 194 varieties or genetic diversity can be seen. So rice there are about 50,000, mango 1,000 varieties, maize 32,000 varieties, and groundnut it is about 194 varieties of the various, and among this rice has got the maximum genetic diversity. So next is genetic diversity is related to, so options are types of community in an area, gene based diversity, so types of species within a community, diversity and evolution of species with a genus? So once again, the answer is genetic diversity is related to gene-based diversity. I told you all the organisms belong to the same species, but they have some differences at the level of the genes. So for example, even in human beings, we have so many races. So all over the world, we have so many human beings. So all of them belong to the single species called as Homo sapien. But in human beings, we have different races, like the European races, the American races, the Dravidian races, the Aryan race, so Mongoloid race, Negroid race. Like this, we have different races, which is one more example for genetic diversity, which is nothing but the gene-based diversity. So types of community in an area. So population, the higher level of population, we have communities. We have different communities in different populations in a particular community. We can tell. So in a community, we may have different organisms living together. So that can be called, in a particular area, we call that as a community. So an ecosystem may contain different types of communities. So gene-based diversity, we have discussed. Types of species within a community. So types of species within a community forms the different species which are present in a community, can be group of species. If they belong to the same species, it will be community, and groups of many populations put together, it forms a community. So different species put together, we call it as many individuals belonging to the same species, we call it as population, and many populations put together, we call it as a community. So next is diversity and evolution of species with a genus. So diversity and evolution of a species, it is something beyond the topic of beyond the topic of biodiversity, which is something related with evolution. So which is due to variations. Next, moving on to the next question. Which of the following is the most important cause of animals and plants being driven to extinction? So, what is the reason that organisms are getting extinct? So, which is the important cause? All the given or causes itself. All are causes of biodiversity loss or reasons for extinction. Among them, we have to choose the most important cause of extinction for animals and plants. So first option is overexploitation, the second is alien species invasion, then the third is habitat loss and fragmentation, and the fourth is co-extinctions. Of course, all these are reasons for extinction of organisms. Among them, the most important is habitat loss and fragmentation. So when there is habitat loss means the organisms lose their habitat or their living place or their home. You know, home is the very prerequisite for any organism because it feels very comfortable and it can survive very comfortably in that particular habitat, which is its home. When that home is lost because of deforestation, or the whole of that area or the habitat is divided into smaller pieces, you call it as fragmentation. So when a big forest is cut for construction of bridges or for construction of layouts or such other things, then the whole forest is cut into pieces, which is called as fragmentation, and many of the organisms which are living in that particular area will lose their home, which is nothing but the habitat loss and fragmentation. When the organism loses its home, it is a greater threat for it to lose its existence. Hence, this is one of the important cause of animals and plants being driven to extinction. So, and we find more than once it so happened more than 14% of the land surface on earth was covered by forest, the tropical rainforest. And now, because of fragmentation, because of urbanization, now we have only 6%. Now we have only 6% of tropical evergreen forest on the land surface. So there is a drastic decrease. This is because of deforestation, and the major reason is urbanization. When there is an increasing population, naturally, to provide hospitals, schools, colleges, or residential areas, the forests are cut down, and urban areas or the various commercial complexes and the residential areas are built, which is nothing but habitat loss. So this is a greater threat for the biodiversity or the plants and animals because they lose their home. So moving to next question, which one of the following is most dangerous to wildlife? Which of the following is most dangerous? So overexploitation, man-made forest, and once again they are almost one and the same question. Habitat destruction can be the answer for this question also. So moving to which of the following regions has the greatest biodiversity on earth? So the region which has got greater biodiversity on earth. So northern boreal forest, Amazon rainforest, none of these, most moist deciduous forests. So among these, the answer is Amazon rainforest. So Amazon rainforest has got the maximum biodiversity. So Amazon rainforest has got more than 1,20,000 invertebrate species. Invertebrate species. Invertebrates, and it has got more than 3,000 birds, 3,000 fishes, 3,000 fishes, species of fishes, 1,300 species of birds, 427 species of amphibians and mammals, amphibians and mammals, and 378 species of reptiles. So it is more than this given number, but still it has got the maximum among the whole of biodiversity on the earth. So Amazon rainforest is the right answer for this question. So moving on to the next question. Alexander van Humboldt described for the first time law of limiting factor, no. All of these, no. Species area relationships, of course, absolutely right. And finally, it is ecological biodiversity. So the Alexander van Humboldt, he was the first person to explain something about the species area relationship. So Alexander van Humboldt was a geographer and a naturalist from Germany, and he explored some of the South American jungles. So during his exploration, what he could find out was the species richness goes on increasing with the increased explored area to a particular limit. So as the species richness goes on increasing as the explored area increases, but to a certain limit, not beyond that. So when you look, he has given an explanation with the help of a graph also. So on the x-axis we have the area, and on the y-axis we have the species richness. So which has been given, which is a rectangular hyperbola. The species richness is a rectangular hyperbola, and on the log scale it is a linear expression. Log S is equal to log C plus Z log A. This is equal to S is equal to CA to the power of Z. So this is the expression, and Z is the regression coefficient. It's called as the regression coefficient. Regression coefficient. So in small habitats and for various taxonomic groups, the value of Z will be almost 0.1 to 0.2 itself. So when this regression coefficient is calculated with comparing with larger habitats like the continents, so it goes on increasing up to 0.6 to 1.2. So in smaller habitats and for different taxonomic group, you don't find a large difference in the Z values. But when you are calculating, making a survey of various taxonomic groups or the groups of organisms in different groups, in different places or in different continents, that is, you are increasing the area. The area of exploration is increased. So the Z value becomes still steeper and it is about 0.6 to 1.2. And some of the birds and mammals in the tropical evergreen forest, they have a Z value of nearly 1.15 is the Z value for frugivorous birds. Frugivorous birds and for mammals. And mammals in the tropical regions have a Z value of 1.15, which is called as the regression coefficient. So this is something related with the species area relationship, which was for the first time given by Alexander von Humboldt. So moving on to the next question. Yeah, which of the following statements is correct? So African catfish is not a threat to indigenous catfishes. The second one is Parthenium is an endemic species of our country. So third one, Lantana is popularly known as carrot grass. And the fourth is Stella sea cow is an extinct animal. So among these, the correct statement, look into the first. African catfish is not a threat to indigenous catfish. So as the name itself tells, it is not a uh, it is a alien fish. That is, the catfish belongs to Africa, and when African catfish was brought to India, so there was a greater threat to indigenous species. So in indigenous fishes. So this is a greater threat. It is not a threat it has given. It is a wrong statement. Second one, Parthenium is an endemic species of our country. No, it is an American species, also called as carrot grass. So lantana is popularly known as carrot grass. No, lantana is also an alien species, not an endemic species, and it is also not called as carrot grass, but Parthenium is called as carrot grass. Therefore, this is also a wrong statement. Stella sea cow. So it is a mammal in the sea. So Stella sea cow. It almost looks like a cow in the sea, but it is a bigger mammal. And Stella sea cow has got extinct and it belonged to Russia. And now it is an extinct animal. So fourth statement is absolutely correct. So next one, the extinction of passenger pigeon was due to. So the options are bird flu virus infection, increased number of predatory birds, non-availability of the food, and over-exploitation by humans. So the first one, bird flu virus infection. Of course, there are examples that many of the organisms have got extinct because of diseases. But in case of a passenger pigeon, it is not the infection or any disease. So going on to second option, increased number of predatory birds. Not even this can be an option, because we know that in predation the predators are very prudent. They see that the prey species will never get extinct. So this is also not right match. Non-availability of the food. So extinction of passenger pigeon cannot be because of non-availability of food, because they are simple organisms, birds which can eat varieties of food like seeds, grains, or even fruits and such other things. So it is because of over exploitation by human beings. So human beings have exploited this animal to a greater extent. So it has been used as a table meal, and therefore it has been greatly exploited by human beings, and hence it has lost its presence today and it has got extinct. Moving on to the next question. Which one of the following pairs of organism is exotic species introduced in India? Exotic means that it is alien. It is not, it doesn't originate in India and it comes from a different country or different place. So The options given are Lantana camara and water hyacinth. The second one is Nile perch and Ficus religiosa. The third is Ficus religiosa and Lantana camara. And the fourth is water hyacinth, Prosopis cineraria. So the right option, following pairs, both of them should be exotic and introduced in India. So Lantana camara and water hyacinth, both of them, they are exotic species which are introduced into India. So Lantana camara for its beautiful flowers, and water hyacinth also for its beautiful blue colored flowers and rosette of leaves, because water hyacinth had a rosette of leaves and blue colored flowers, and it was first brought into India by Lady Hastings, that is Vaughan Hastings' wife, called as Lady Hastings, brought this water hyacinth to India, and it has got a very rapid growth. So this grows in a very rapid and an invasive way, and today it has become a weed in the water. So both of water hyacinth is a hydrophyte, but Lantana camara is a mesophyte. So Nile perch, this is also an exotic species, but it is a fish. Ficus religiosa, no, it belongs to Indian. So origin is India. Ficus religiosa, once again Indian. It is not an exotic species, but Lantana is an exotic. So water hyacinth, Prosopis and Cineraria. So Prosopis and Cineraria belong to India, but not water hyacinth. So therefore, first option is the right answer, Lantana camara and water hyacinth. Moving on to the next question. Which of the following is not an alien species? Which of the following is not an alien species? That is, it should be an indigenous species. That it is a species which belongs to India originally. So Parthenium, of course, it is an alien species coming from America. Clarius gary pinus. So it is also a fish coming from Africa. And Podophyllum, of course, this is an Indian species, and Ecornia or water hyacinth is also an alien species. So the not an alien species is Podophyllum. Podophyllum is the indigenous species, and it is also called as May apple, or and a resin is extracted from this podophyllum and called as podophyllotoxin, which is a neurotoxic agent. So podophyllum is an indigenous species of India. So moving next question, which of the following is correctly matched? Erenchyma opuntia, stratification, population, Parthenium hysterophorus, threat to biodiversity, H pyramid, biome. So the right match, correct match. So Erenchyma or type of parenchyma which can be seen in hydrophytes. But they have given opuntia. Opuntia is a xerophyte, and you cannot find Erenchyma in opuntia, so it is a wrong match. Stratification. So it is the vertical distribution of different species occupying a particular level in the ecosystem. So it can be, it forms the structure of the ecosystem, we can tell, and it is not related with population, but it is related with the ecosystem. So it is not a right match. The third one, Parthenium hysterophorus, threat to biodiversity. Of course, Parthenium grows in such a sporadic way. So it was of great menace in India. To eliminate Parthenium, finally, Mexican beetle were used to eliminate this Parthenium from India. Such was its invasive distribution on land in India, and finally, with the help of the biological control method, that is, with the help of the Mexican beetle, it was removed. So finally, coming to H pyramid. So H pyramid is something related with the various ages in a population. So number of individuals belonging to a particular age group helps in predicting whether in the future days the population is going to increase or decrease in a particular region. So age pyramids, there are three types. One is expanding type of age pyramid. The shape of the age pyramid is almost triangular. Then the urn shaped and bell shaped. We have three different types of age pyramids. So they do not match with biome, but they match with populations. So Parthenium hysterophorus which is posing a greater threat to biodiversity is the right answer for this question. So moving on to the next question. The alien species introduced into Lake Victoria that was responsible for the extinction of cichlid fishes in is. So the answer is Nile perch. So in Africa, it so happened this Nile perch were introduced into Lake Victoria, and it led to the extinction of cichlid fishes. So this is an example of invasion of alien species. So when an alien species or a foreign species comes, it may bring a greater threat to the indigenous species. So nearly 200 varieties of cichlid fish gets extinct in this particular case, and this is an example for invasion of alien species, which leads to the extinction of the indigenous species. So murals, they are all type of fishes, African catfishes. So they are also different types of fishes, and carrot grasses, nothing but the Parthenium. So they are all alien species, but Nile perch is the one which is responsible for cichlid fish, which is also an alien species. So moving on to the next question. Which of the following is not an invasive alien species in Indian context? So, which of them is not an alien species? Ecornia, of course, we have already studied. It is an alien species coming from America. Lantana also coming from America. And Cynodon is Cynodon dactylon, which is nothing but the grass, which is one of the indigenous species. So, it is not an invasive alien species. So, you can go with Cynodon as the answer. So, Parthenium also an alien species, as we know it, it is not an indigenous species. So the only indigenous species or not an invasive alien species is Cynodon in the above given examples. So next, so we also call it as Bermuda grass. So there's a match the following in the next question. Column 1 consisting of animals and columns 2 consisting of the location. So on the first column, we have all the animals which have already got extinct. So dodo is a bird which belonged to Mauritius. So it was a Mauritius bird. So dodo lost its extinction because of because people were hunting it for food, and there were so many reptiles which were eating its eggs. So the dodo eggs were also consumed by various organisms. The eggs became the predators of various other animals, and hence dodo lost its extinction, and it did belong to Mauritius. So A3 is the right match. Kaga. So kaga is a zebra-like organism which belonged to Africa, and because of extensive hunting of this kaga, it lost its existence, and it belongs to Africa. A3, B1 can be matched. Then thylacine. So thylacine belongs to Australia. It is a fox-like animal. So it lost its existence because of habitat destruction, one of the reason, and also some of the diseases. So both have ended up the species of thylacine, and they basically belong to Australia. So C4. So A3, B1, C4 can be the right match, and the fourth one, Stella sea cow, belonged to Russia. So Stella sea cow was also lost because people hunted it for flesh. And these are some of the A3, B1, C4, D2 is the right match for the given question. Next, moving on to next one. How many hotspots of biodiversity in the world have been identified till date by normal measures? So, how many hotspots are there? So, there are about 34 hotspots, biodiversity hotspots. So, biodiversity hotspots are those regions present in the world which exhibits highest species richness. So highest species richness ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಇರುತ್ತೋ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಬಯೋಡೈವರ್ಸಿಟಿ ರಿಚ್ನೆಸ್ ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಇರುತ್ತೋ ಆ ಪ್ಲೇಸಸ್ ಅನ್ನ ನಾವು ಹಾಟ್ ಸ್ಪಾಟ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಕರೆದಿದ್ದೀವಿ. ಅಂಡ್ ಇಡೀ ವರ್ಲ್ಡ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ದೇರ್ ಆರ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ 34 ಹಾಟ್ ಸ್ಪಾಟ್ಸ್. 34 ಹಾಟ್ ಸ್ಪಾಟ್ಸ್ ಇದೆ. ಅರ್ಲಿಯರ್ ದೇರ್ ವರ್ ಓನ್ಲಿ 25 ಹಾಟ್ ಸ್ಪಾಟ್ಸ್ ಅಂಡ್ ನೌ ದೇರ್ ಆರ್ 34 ಹಾಟ್ ಸ್ಪಾಟ್ಸ್. So earlier India had only 3 hotspots. Now it has got 4 hotspots. So northwest savannas are also included as one of the biodiversity hotspot of India, along with the Western Ghats, the Indo-Burma region, and the Himalayan region. Along with the 3, one more is added. That is the northwestern savannas are also added to the list now. So there are about 34 biodiversity hotspots, and it will not even cover nearly 2% of the land area. But mass extinctions can be prevented in the hotspot areas by nearly 30%. So extinction of organisms can be prevented by 30% in the hotspots, biodiversity hotspots. Yes, moving on to the next question. The species confined to a particular region and not found elsewhere is termed as. So, keystone, alien, rare, endemic. So, these are various terminologies which are used in the what? Keystone is one important tool to identify the organisms. So, the species confined to a particular region and not found elsewhere is termed as endemic. So endemic, which is confined to a particular area. For example, the lion-tailed macaca is one ape-like animal which is confined only to the Western Ghats. Salim Ali fruit bat is confined to Himalayan ranges. Like this, we have Nilgiri Thar, we have the Indian bison. All these are so many species which are endemic. They are endemic to India. Like this, we have so many endemic species, not only in case of animals, but also in case of plants. So keystone, which is one of the important tool to study the various organisms, and keystone is one of the important organism which will represent that particular ecosystem. For example, the African elephant. So African elephant is telling something about the African continent itself. So that becomes the keystone species. It is called as the keystone species. So alien species, not an indigenous species. ನಮ್ಮ ದೇಶಕ್ಕೆ ಅಥವಾ ನಮಗೆ ಸಂಬಂಧ ಪಡೆದಲೇ ಇರುವಂತಹ ಸ್ಪೀಶೀಸ್, ಬೇರೆ ಯಾವುದೋ ದೇಶಕ್ಕೆ ಬೇರೆ ಯಾವುದೋ ರೀಜನ್ಗೆ ಸೇರಿರುವಂತಹ ಸ್ಪೀಶೀಸ್, ಯು ಕಾಲ್ ಇಟ್ ಆಸ್ ಫಾರಿನ್ ಆರ್ ಏಲಿಯನ್. ರೇರ್ ಸ್ಪೀಶೀಸ್. ರೇರ್ ಸ್ಪೀಶೀಸ್ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಅದು ಥ್ರೆಟನ್ಡ್ ಅಥವಾ ಎಂಡೇಂಜರ್ಡ್ ಅಲ್ಲ, ಅದರ ನಂಬರೇ ಬಹಳ ಕಡಿಮೆ ಇದೆ ಅಂಡ್ ದೇ ಆರ್ ಫೌಂಡ್ ವೆರಿ ರೇರ್ಲಿ, hence the name rare is given. So endemic is the right answer for the given question. So which of the following is not a steroid hormone? So the questions coming from the chapter coordination, chemical coordination and integration. So which of the following is not a steroid hormone? So we know that the hormones which are secreted in very, very minute quantities from the endocrine glands of our body. So the question is, which of the following is not a steroid hormone? So hormones, they are nothing but intercellular messengers. They are secreted in trace amount and they are non-nutrient chemicals which are secreted from our endocrine glands or the ductless glands. In our body, there are several ductless glands, and the secretions, chemical secretions coming out of these glands directly added to the blood are called as hormones, and they're secreted in very, very trace amounts, that is in picograms and nanograms they are secreted. So now coming to which is not a steroid hormone. So hormones have been classified based on their chemical composition. They have been classified into peptides, polypeptides and proteins. So we also have the steroids. We also have the hormones which are steroids. We also have iodothyronines. That is, they are made up of iodine hormones or iodine based hormones. And the last one is amino acid derivatives or the different types of hormones. So here the question is, which of the following is not a steroid hormone? So there are various examples given over there. So before going to that, peptides, polypeptides and proteins. So all the hormones which are secreted from the pituitary gland. So all the hormones that are secreted from the pituitary gland and the hypothalamus or of protein composition and steroids. So all the steroids, all the sex hormones, you can call them as sex hormones. That is the testosterone, the estrogens, the progesterone, all of them, they are all steroids. Iodothyronines, we have T3 and T4, which are iodothyronines. And amino acid derivatives, we have epinephrine or adrenaline as an example for this, or norepinephrine. So now looking into the question, which of the following is not a steroid hormone? The first one is cortisone, the second is estrogen, the third is testosterone, and the fourth is adrenaline. So it shouldn't be a steroid hormone. So we know that estrogen, testosterone, and cortisone, all of them are what is called as the steroids, whereas adrenaline is nothing but the not a steroid hormone. It is not a steroid hormone, but it is made up of adrenaline or nothing but epinephrine. So it is made up of amino acid derivative. So estrogen, testosterone, and cortisones. Cortisones, they are the hormones which are secreted from the adrenal cortex. So hence the name corticoids or cortisones, or those hormones secreted from the adrenal cortex. So estrogen and testosterone, we know estrogen is the female sex hormone secreted from the female gonads, that is ovary, and testosterone is the male sex hormone which is secreted from the male gonads called testes. So right answer is adrenaline, which is secreted from the medulla of the adrenal gland. So adrenal medulla will secrete the adrenaline. So adrenaline and noradrenaline are two important hormones there, and they are also called as emergency hormones. They are also called as the emergency hormones. So next is, which of the following diseases is not related to thyroid gland? So thyroid gland, which is present on either side of the trachea, they are paired glands present on either side of the trachea. So this thyroid gland is going to secrete T3 and T4 hormones, that is iodothyronines. And now some diseases are given over there. So this less secretion of these hormones also causes certain diseases, whereas the over secretion of these hormones, you call it as hyposecretion and hypersecretions, or two terminologies used. So hyposecretion is less secretion than the adequate. Hypersecretion is excess secretion than the adequate. So hyposecretion is less secretion and hypersecretion is over secretion or excess secretion. So now, which of the disease is not related? In both the cases, in hypersecretion and hypersecretion, it leads to certain diseases. Acromegaly, myxedema, goiter, and cretinism. So the only answer not related to thyroid gland is acromegaly. So acromegaly is a disease which is caused due to excessive secretion of GH, that is the growth hormone in adults. In case of adults, so there will be deformities in the bone. So there is excess deposition of the bone content, which makes it abnormal, and also bone size in the hands, feet, or all, and the face is abnormal. That is called as acromegaly. So myxedema, it is due to hypothyroidism, which is due to less secretion of the thyroid hormones. Cretinism is also because of the hypothyroidism seen in pregnant ladies. So if there is hypothyroidism means less secretion of the thyroid hormones in pregnant ladies. In pregnant ladies. So when they give birth to, when these pregnant ladies they give birth to babies, so these babies or baby can be called as a cretin because because it will have less of IQ levels and so many stunted growth can be seen in this baby. Hence, it is called as cretin, and this disease is called as cretinism. So, myxedema, cretinism, both are because of hypothyroidism, and also goiter. It is also due to lack of iodine. Because of the lack of iodine, there is less secretion, less production of the thyroid hormones, that is T3 and T4, which leads to swelling up of the thyroid gland in the particularly in the neck region, which is called as goiter. So that is because of the enlargement of the nodules of the gland, that is thyroid gland, which leads to the disease called as goiter. So myxedema, goiter and cretinism, all of them are related with thyroid gland. The disease not related with thyroid gland is acromegaly. Yes, moving on to next question. Diabetes is due to sodium deficiency, enzyme deficiency, hormonal deficiency, iodine deficiency, or the given various options. So diabetes, we have two types of diabetes. One is called as diabetes insipidus and the other is called as diabetes mellitus. So diabetes mellitus and diabetes insipidus. So diabetes insipidus and diabetes mellitus. So both of them are due to hormonal deficiencies. Diabetes insipidus, it is because of a deficiency of ADH, and diabetes mellitus, it is because of the deficiency of the hormone called as insulin, which is secreted from the beta cells of the pancreas. So we can directly go to hormonal deficiency is the right answer. So moving on to the next question, diabetes. A steroid hormone which regulates glucose metabolism is cortisol, corticosterone, and 11-deoxycorticosterone. So the various uh, options. So all corticosterone, and deoxycorticosterone. Let us first mark the answer, then go for the discussion. So steroid hormone which regulates glucose metabolism. So we have the adrenal gland. So adrenal gland has been divided into adrenal cortex and adrenal medulla. So this adrenal cortex will secrete a huge number of hormones and they are collectively called as corticoids. And among the corticoids we have two types, glucocorticoids and mineralocorticoids. And in glucocorticoids, we have one example, that is cortisol. So, which is concerned with the glucose metabolism. So, the answer is cortisol. Then, what is cortisone, corticosterone, and deoxycorticosterone? So, all of them are various hormones. Corticosterones, then also called as is secreted from the cortex of the adrenal gland, and it is also called as 21 hydroxysterol. It is also called as 21 hydroxysterone, and corticosterone is one more which is secreted from the adrenal cortex. Then 11-dehydroxycorticosterone. It is also called as mineralocorticoid. The 11-deoxycorticosterone is a type of mineralocorticoids. So let me explain it in very short and brief. So if gland, adrenal gland, and this has got two divisions, that is adrenal cortex and the other is adrenal medulla, and the other is adrenal medulla. So this medulla is concerned with the secretion of epinephrine and norepinephrine, epinephrine and the norepinephrine, both called as emergency hormones. So this is not our topic. Emergency hormones. Let me leave it off here. Or it is also called as F3 hormones. The adrenal cortex, all the hormones which are secreted from the adrenal cortex are called as corticoids. So here we have two types of corticoids. One is called as glucocorticoids, which is concerned with glucose metabolism, and mineralocorticoids, which is concerned with electrolyte balance. So one of the best example of glucocorticoid is the cortisol. There are also other hormones like corticosterone or cortisone, and here in mineralocorticoid we have the 11-dehydroxycorticosterone is a mineralocorticoid, and one more best example of mineralocorticoid is aldosterone. So that is about a very brief account of the adrenal gland I would like to give. So these are all hormones from the adrenal cortex itself. Moving on to next question. Chemically, hormones are steroids, biogenic amines, all of these proteins. Of course, I had given the classification in the first itself. So there are hormones which are steroids. For example, the estrogen, the progesterone, the testosterone, all of them are nothing but the steroids. And biogenic amines. So we have the biogenic amines like the epinephrine and the norepinephrine, which can be called as biogenic amines, and proteins. So protein hormones, all the hormones secreted from the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. Nearly 9 hormones are secreted from the pituitary gland. All of them are nothing but proteins. So answer is all of these. So moving on to the next question. Which of the following is an amino acid derived hormone? So the one which is derived from the amino acid. So I have given a lot of explanation about the adrenal gland. So here estriol, ecdysone, estradiol, all of them are steroid hormones. The only amino acid derived hormone is epinephrine, or what is called as the adrenaline. So estriol, ecdysone and estradiol are other hormones. So estriol, estradiol and one more is there. All of them are secreted from estriol and estrone. Or all estrogen, estriol, estrone and estradiol. Estradiol, estriol, estradiol and estrone are 3 minor hormones of estrogen. Right? Estriol, estradiol and estrone. So they are secreted from the ovary, the mammary glands, and also some during pregnancy they are also secreted from the placenta. So they are minor forms of estrogens. So what is ecdysone? So it is ecdysone and not ecodysone. It is ecdysone. O should have been removed. It is ecdysone. So ecdysone is a hormone which is secreted in insects. And they bring about the process of molting, or it is also called as ecdysis, and the process is also called as ecdysis. So the periodic shedding off of the exoskeleton, you call it as ecdysis, which is brought about by a hormone called as ecdysone. So for example, in arthropods, particularly insects, you have studied in cockroach, there is molting takes place. Even in other arthropods, all of the insects, we find this ecdysis process. Silkworm, it is also one of the one which undergoes molting process. You might have heard in case of snakes, it sheds off its external skin, right? That is also nothing but the ecdysis. So ecdysone is the hormone which is going to control the process of ecdysis or molting. So moving on to next question. So the amino acid tryptophan is the precursor for the synthesis of. So there is a question little bit twisted. So nowhere in the textbook we find like tryptophan is a precursor of which of the following hormone or such questions are not given. And such things have been not mentioned in the textbook. But still looking into the amino acid tryptophan is the precursor for the synthesis of. So tryptophan, as we know, it is an amino acid, right? So if amino acid is there, then it should be either a protein component or it should be an amino acid hormone, right? A hormone which is derived out of amino acids. Now look at the question options: cortisol and cortisone. So cortisol and cortisone, we know it; they are steroid hormones. Thyroxine and triiodothyronines, they are also, sorry, cortisol and cortisone, they are protein hormones. Thyroxine and triiodothyronines, they are iodine containing hormones. And melatonin and serotonin. So this can be the possible answer, but still look into the other option. Estrogen and progesterone are also thyroid hormones. So amino acid derivatives are melatonin and serotonin. So what is melatonin? So melatonin is the secretion from the pineal gland, right? Melatonin is the melatonin is secreted from the pineal gland. This is also called as hormone of darkness. Hormone of darkness. So it induces sleep in the darkness, right? So it is also called as hormone of darkness. So there are so many effects on the body. It will control the 24-hour rhythm. 24-hour rhythm. That is, so in the morning we are very active, in the afternoon or even in the evening. All this time we are active, but we are almost inactive at the night time, which is nothing but the 24-hour rhythm or the sleep and wake cycles. It also regulates the sleep and wake cycles. So it also influences some other activities of our body. Like in females, it will influence the menstrual cycle. It will affect the pigmentation of the body. It will influence the metabolism. So it also influences the defense capabilities. So all these are other things brought about by melatonin. So it has got various functions in our body. And serotonin is a neurotransmitter. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter. As we have already heard, what is a neurotransmitter? These are chemicals which are secreted from the axonal endings. Endings of the axon will secrete these chemicals which are called as neurotransmitters, and it is also a vasoconstrictor. It is a vasoconstrictor. That is, it will bring about the constriction of the blood vessels. It will bring about the constriction of the blood vessels, hence called as vasoconstrictors. So therefore, the answer is melatonin and serotonin. So this is only, you can use your common sense to answer this question. There's nothing to explore more about it. Next, moving on to the next question. Which one of the following is not a second messenger in hormone action? So now coming to how exactly hormones act upon the various organs of our body. To take an example, the hormone action can be of two types. So hormones, they act upon the target organs with the help of the receptors which are present in the target organs. So hormones go and bind to the receptors organ which are present in the target organs. So target organ means the TSH which is secreted from the pituitary gland has got a target organ, that is thyroid gland. ACTH which is secreted from the pituitary gland, the target organ is adrenal gland. Like this. So they go to the target organ, so they bind to the surface which these target organs, on them they contain hormone receptors. They are also nothing but proteins, hormone receptors. So these hormone receptors, the hormones bind to the hormone receptors and they form hormone receptor complex, thereby bringing about the hormonal action. And this hormonal action, these hormone receptors are of two types. When one is membrane bound hormone receptors, and other is the intracellular hormone receptors. So almost all the protein hormones have these, what is called as the membrane bound hormone receptors. So protein hormones means all the hormones which are secreted from both hypothalamus and also from the and the pituitary gland, all protein hormones. So they have membrane bound hormone receptors, and this is a question which is coming from this part, that is membrane bound hormone receptors. So intracellular receptors, we have the steroid hormones and the iodohormones which have got the intracellular hormone receptors. That is, the hormone receptors are present inside the cell. Here in this case they are present on the cell membrane. In the first case it is present on the cell membrane. For example, let us take the example of our ovarian cell membrane. The ovarian cell membrane, which is showing a hormone receptor like this. This is the hormone receptor, and we have the hormone called as, let us assume there is a hormone like FSH. So this is a FSH hormone and this is the ovarian cell membrane. So this FSH hormone is going to bind to the, this is the hormone receptor, So this hormone which is secreted from the ovary, FSH is a hormone which is secreted from the pituitary gland. So from the pituitary gland, through the blood, it reaches the ovary, and on the ovarian cell membrane, it binds to the hormone receptor like this. So this forms the hormone receptor complex. Now it becomes a hormone receptor complex like this. So now it will not enter into the cell of the ovary, but it will stay on the ovarian cell membrane and it will send a secondary messenger. Either the secondary messenger will be calcium ions or cyclic AMP. So cyclic AMP or calcium can be the secondary messengers. So they send a message which will bring about the biochemical changes, which will bring about the biochemical response or changes. And finally, these biochemical changes brings about the changes, that is physiological change. They bring about the physiological change. So physiological, biochemical changes and physiological changes. So we know what is the role of FSH. It is follicle stimulating hormone which is secreted from the pituitary gland, and it will act upon the ovary. So in ovary, what it is going to do? It is going to convert. It is going to bring about the conversion of the primary follicle into growth and development of the ovarian follicles. So primary follicle is getting converted into secondary, secondary into tertiary, tertiary get converted into Graafian follicle. So all that physiological change it is going to bring about by placing itself on the ovarian cell membrane. It will never enter into the cell, right? So hence it is called as membrane bound hormone receptors. That is, the receptors for this particular hormone is present on the cell membrane. Hence it is called as membrane bound hormone receptor. And which one of, now looking into the question now, which one of the following is not a second messenger in hormone action? So cyclic GMP, cyclic AMP. So AMP can be replaced by, I have given the example of cyclic AMP. So AMP can be replaced by GMP. So adenosine monophosphate, AMP is, and GMP is guanosine monophosphate. So we know both of them are nitrogen bases, so there will be no much difference. And calcium is also, as I have already told, it will also act like a secondary messenger. The only which doesn't belong to the group is sodium. So this sodium is not a second messenger, right? So moving on to the next question. Hormones are non-nutrient chemicals. Hormones are non-nutrient chemicals. Intracellular messengers. They are intracellular messengers. All the above produced in trace amounts. Produced in trace amounts. So hormones are, as it is the definition of the hormone itself. So they are non-nutrient chemicals. That is, they are not a part of the nutrition. So if there is some deficiency of hormones in our body, for example, if we have insulin deficiency, by eating some insulin-based compounds or dietary nutrients, we cannot increase the secretion. That is hardly possible, right? So therefore it is called as non-nutrient chemicals. Therefore it is called as non-nutrient chemicals. They are called as intracellular messengers because they send messengers between the cells itself. Intercell, they act as messengers in between the cells. Therefore they are called as intercellular messengers, and they are produced in trace amounts. So they are not produced in abundant. They are produced in trace amounts, not even in grams, but in picograms and nanograms. They are secreted in small traces. They are secreted, but they will have a large impact on our body. But they will have a very large impact on our body. So all the above statements are right regarding hormones. So moving on to the next question. What is correct to say about the hormone action in humans? So secretion of thymosin is stimulated with aging. FSH stimulates the secretion of estrogen and progesterone. Glucagon is secreted by beta cells of islets of Langerhans and stimulates glycogenolysis. In females, FSH first binds with specific receptors on ovarian cell membrane. So, as I have right now explained the things about the hormone receptors or the membrane bound receptors, you can directly select the answer to this. In females, FSH binds with specific receptors on ovarian cell membrane is absolutely right. But still look into the other statements. First one, secretion of thymosin is stimulated with aging. See, thymosin is the secretion of thymus gland. Thymosins or the secretions of the thymus gland which is present behind the heart is very big when the thymus, the secretions are called as thymosins. So This thymus gland will almost reduce to half of its size by the time the time the human beings reach their maturity. And as the age goes on, there is a reduction in the size of the thymus, or degeneration of the thymus gland is happening as the age goes on. So secretion of thymosin is stimulated with aging is absolutely wrong. Aging will degenerate the thymosin secretions, or lessen the secretion of the thymosins. That is why age-old people are very weak, because they have very less secretion of thymosins. So aging, there is less secretion of thymosins in aged persons, right? So this is not a correct statement. FSH stimulates the secretion of estrogen and progesterone. Can you agree with this point? FSH stimulates the secretion of estrogen and progesterone. As we have already told, FSH is a hormone which is secreted from the pituitary gland. So FSH along with LH, FSH is follicle stimulating hormone and LH is the luteinizing hormone. Both together are called as gonadotropins. They are called as gonadotropins, and they are secreted by the pituitary gland. Both of them, they are secreted from the pituitary gland and they are called as gonadotropins because they stimulate the activity of the gonads or the sex organs, right? So FSH and LH have they play different role in both males and females. Okay, so now the question is, FSH stimulates the secretion of estrogen and progesterone. Exactly speaking, estrogen and progesterone are ovarian hormones. So FSH cannot bring about the stimulation of or secretion of estrogen and progesterone. So estrogen and progesterone, both of them are nothing but ovarian hormones. They are what? They are ovarian hormones. They are ovarian hormones. Hormones secreted from the gonads. So FSH and LH will have an influence on the gonads, but not directly influence estrogen and progesterone hormone. So FSH, I have already told, it brings in females, it brings about the growth and development of follicles. So then in males, it brings about spermatogenesis. In males, it will bring about spermatogenesis. And LH, in case of female, it is bringing about the process of ovulation. And in case of males, they are going to bring about the process of, that is, secretion of androgens. Secretion of androgens is a part of LH in males, in case of males. So nowhere FSH is going to stimulate the secretion of estrogen and progesterone. Many of you may be under certain confusion. Please see that this is not going to have a direct influence on the secretion of estrogen and progesterone, because they are ovarian hormones. Next, glucagon is secreted by beta cells of islets of Langerhans and stimulates glycogenolysis. So glycogen lysis, you can also spell it as glycogen lysis. So look at, glucagon is secreted from alpha cells of the islet of Langerhans. See, pancreas is called as a dual gland or a composite gland, or an pancreas is called as a composite gland or a dual gland, because it can both function as an endocrine gland and an exocrine gland. So the pancreas in it contains pancreatic acini, which is going to secrete the pancreatic juice, right? So that pancreatic juice comes out with the help of the pancreatic duct. So that can be the exocrine part of pancreas. But the endocrine part of pancreas is, it is going to, the pancreas has got islet of Langerhans, a part called as islets of Langerhans, And this islets of Langerhans has got groups of cells, has got groups of cells like alpha cells, beta cells, gamma cells, etc. And alpha cells are going to secrete glucagon and beta cells are going to secrete insulin. So, beta cells do not secrete glucagon. Therefore, it cannot be a right statement, right? Glucagon is secreted by alpha cells of islets of Langerhans and stimulates glycogen lysis. So, glycogen, we know that the formation of glycogen is brought about by glucagon. So, glucagon of course stimulates glycogen lysis. Glycogen is broken down to glucose and it is released into the bloodstream. Hence, glucagon is called as hyperglycemic hormone. It is called as hyperglycemic hormone. It is going to increase the blood sugar levels. Hence, it is called as hyperglycemic hormone. So, antagonistic to glucagon is the insulin. It is going to decrease the levels of glucose in the blood. Hence, it is called as hypoglycemic hormone, right? So, glycogen lysis means, so when there is excess of glucose produced, it is stored in the form of glycogen in the liver cells. So, when there is, when the cells are starving for glucose, so glycogen is broken down to release glucose and released into the bloodstream. So, this happens. So, breakdown of glycogen is called as glycogen lysis or glycogenolysis. It is also referred as. So, the right answer is in females, FSH first binds with specific receptors on ovarian cell membrane. Is absolutely right. Next, moving on to the next question. Through negative feedback, a hormone may shut off the secretion of anterior pituitary hormone by. So, look at the question. Through negative feedback, a hormone may shut off the secretion of an anterior pituitary hormone by inhibiting the release of hypothalamic inhibiting hormone. All of these, inhibiting the release of hypothalamic releasing hormone, stimulating the release of a hypothalamic releasing hormone. So the right answer is inhibiting the release of releasing hormone, inhibiting the release of a hypothalamic or releasing hormone. See, the pituitary gland is called as the master gland, and this pituitary gland will control the various other glands in our body, the endocrine glands like the thyroid, adrenal, gonads. All of them are under the control of the pituitary gland and hence it is called as the master gland. So, hypothalamus in turn will control the pituitary gland. Hypothalamus in turn is going to control the pituitary gland, right? So, how it is going to control? By secreting two types of hormones. One is called as the releasing hormones. One is called as the releasing hormones and the other is called as inhibiting hormones. Inhibiting hormones. So, hypothalamus, by releasing certain hormones, gives a command to the pituitary gland to secrete certain hormones. So, when the secretion is to be stopped, there is one more command come from the hypothalamus, like inhibition is brought about for releasing hormone. Thereby, this pituitary gland will inhibit the secretion of the particular hormone. For example, so when there is the gonadotropin releasing hormone, which is released, which is from hypothalamus, GnRH, which is released from the hypothalamus, will stimulate the pituitary gland, to secrete gonadotropins, will stimulate the pituitary gland to secrete the gonadotropins and GnRH is secreted from the hypothalamus. So GnRH, which is secreted from the hypothalamus, that is gonadotropin releasing hormone, will influence the pituitary gland or stimulate the pituitary gland to secrete the gonadotropins, that is FSH and LH. See how it is under the control of hypothalamus. At the same time, there is the inhibition. Is inhibition of the growth hormone. It is going to secrete somatostatin. Somatostatin. So which will inhibit pituitary gland to stop the secretion of GH. To stop secretion of GH, that is the growth hormone. Like this, both of them are related. So inhibiting the release of releasing hormone. So in this case, you take the example of GnRH. So inhibiting the release of GnRH will stop the secretion of the gonadotropins from the pituitary gland. Okay, so this in the first case you can see that there is an inhibition of the release of the releasing or inhibiting the release of a hypothalamic releasing hormone will bring about the negative feedback. Which of the following is an accumulation and release center of neurohormones? So the options are posterior pituitary lobe, intermediate lobe of the pituitary, anterior pituitary lobe, and hypothalamus. So I was telling about the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus will control the pituitary gland. So pituitary gland has got two important lobes. One is called as the adenohypophysis or the anterior lobe. The pituitary gland. So I'll write the diagram so that it will be easy for you to understand, I hope. There is secretion of hormones. So you can find the two lobes of the pituitary gland. So there is portal circulation which releases. So this is the portal circulation. This is the anterior lobe of pituitary gland, and we have the secretions coming out here, reaching the portal circulation, from the portal circulation coming to the adenohypophysis of the pituitary gland. And here we have the nerve endings of the cell. We have the nerve endings of the axonal nerve endings which will give the secretions. So this is hypothalamus and this is the pituitary gland. Pituitary gland. So this shows that this is posterior lobe of pituitary gland, also called as neurohypophysis, also called as neurohypophysis, neurohypophysis, and this is also called as adenohypophysis, adenohypophysis. So hypophysis means it refers to pituitary gland. So if this is hypothalamus, it has got neurosecretory cells. We call these two as the neurosecretory cells. So these nucleosecretory cells in the hypothalamus are referred as nuclei. They are referred as nuclei. So at their axonal endings, they have neurosecretions. So here what is happening? This posterior lobe is under the direct control of hypothalamus. Hypothalamus is going to secrete certain hormones and here they are stored in the neurohypophysis. It is going to synthesize and secrete certain hormones and they are stored in the neurohypophysis of the pituitary gland. But here it is not the case. Hypothalamus is having an indirect control over the adenohypophysis through the portal circulation. So this is portal circulation. Through that it is going to control the adenohypophysis, right? So now look into the question, which of the following is an accumulation and release center of neurohormones? Now I hope you can answer this question. It is posterior pituitary lobe, intermediate lobe of the pituitary, anterior pituitary lobe or hypothalamus. Which of the following is an accumulation and release center of neurohormones? So exactly. So answer is hypothalamus, which is an accumulation and release center of neurohormones. So neurohormones are released by the hypothalamus into the posterior pituitary lobe. So neurohormones are present in the hypothalamus. We have also studied this point even in the neural control part. So hypothalamus is actually called as the part of the forebrain. It is also called as diencephalon, and hypothalamus is present as the basal part of the forebrain or the basal part of the hypothalamus. Basal part of the diencephalon is hypothalamus. Next, GnRH, a hypothalamic hormone needed in reproduction, acts as GnRH, a hypothalamic hormone needed in reproduction, acts on posterior pituitary gland and stimulates secretion of LH and relaxin. Second option, anterior pituitary gland and stimulates secretion of LH and FSH. So posterior pituitary gland and stimulates secretion of oxytocin and FSH. Anterior pituitary gland and stimulates secretion of LH and oxytocin. So to answer this question, we need to understand how many hormones are exactly secreted from the pituitary gland and which part is going to secrete. Now, look into pituitary gland. Pituitary gland is going to secrete, is divided into two portions. So that is adenohypophysis, or you can also call it as anterior lobe, adenohypophysis, and neurohypophysis. All right. So this adenohypophysis is once again divided into two parts. One is called as pars distalis. distalis, and the other is called as pars nervosa. So here we don't have anything called as intermediate lobe. It is called as anterior lobe. This is called as posterior lobe. Both of there's no intermediate lobe. The intermediate lobe is fused in human beings with the posterior with the anterior lobe. So pars distalis. This is pars intermedia. Sorry, pars intermedia or fused together. So this is pars nervosa. It has got one part called as the pars nervosa. Now, this pars distalis is going to secrete 6 hormones. Is going to secrete 6 hormones. Pars intermedia is going to secrete 1 hormone. And pars nervosa is going to secrete 2 hormones. Total of 9 hormones. 6 plus 1, 7. 7 plus 2, 9. So 6 hormones here are, one is GH, the growth hormone. The second is TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. Third is ACTH, that is adrenocorticotropic hormone. Then LH, luteinizing hormone. FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, and LTH, or it is also called as prolactin. It is also called as prolactin or lactogenic hormone, also called as lactogenic hormone or LTH. Pars intermedia is going to secrete only one hormone, that is MSH, that is melanocyte stimulating hormone it is. And pars nervosa is going to secrete 2 important hormones. One is ADH or vasopressin. ADH or vasopressin, and the other is OT or oxytocin. Oxytocin. Right? So this is a detailed account of the various 9 hormones secreted from the pituitary gland. So pars distalis is going to secrete 6 hormones, pars intermedia only 1 hormone, and pars nervosa 2 hormones. Only pars nervosa is a part of neurohypophysis or the posterior lobe. This is anterior lobe, which has got secretion of nearly 6 plus 1, 7 hormones, right? Now we will try to answer this question. So what is the question telling? GnRH, that is gonadotropin releasing hormone, a hypothalamic hormone needed in reproduction, acts on. So as we know, it is gonadotropic hormone GnRH. The main intention of GnRH is to stimulate the pituitary gland to secrete what? FSH and LH, right? Now let us link the connection, then go for the detailed looking into the options. Now, posterior pituitary, first option tells posterior pituitary gland and stimulates the secretion of LH and relaxin. So, GnRH is going to stimulate posterior pituitary. Is it okay? No, in posterior we have only 2 hormones like ADH and OT, so it is not possible, right? So, we will cancel that option. So, it is going to act upon anterior pituitary gland and stimulate secretion of LH and FSH. So, LH and FSH is absolutely right. It is from pituitary gland. From which part? It is from the adenohypophysis or the anterior lobe. So, anterior pituitary gland and stimulate secretion of LH and FSH is absolutely right. So here what's wrong in the third option? Posterior pituitary gland and stimulate secretion of oxytocin and FSH. Of course, oxytocin is secreted from posterior pituitary gland but not FSH. FSH is secreted from anterior pituitary gland. And in the fourth option, what is wrong? Anterior pituitary gland and stimulate secretion of LH. Of course, completely right. But oxytocin is secreted from neurohypophysis or the posterior gland. Therefore, all the other 3 options are wrong and only second is applicable. Moving on to the next question. Pars nervosa is a part of. So I have already discussed it is a part of the pituitary gland. So brain, it is a part of the neural system where it contains huge number of neurons. Pineal gland, so it is the gland which is present, which secretes the melatonin, which is also present near the brain itself. And the spinal cord is also the part of the central nervous system, which contains spinal nerves, which is the originating point of the spinal nerves. Okay, so vas nervosa is a part of pituitary gland is the right answer. Moving on to the next question. Hormone that promotes cell division, protein synthesis and bone growth is. So we have several options like option number 1 telling PTH. So next is ACTH, GH and ADH. So we have hormone that promotes cell division. Cell division is required for growth. Protein synthesis, that is also required for growth. Bone growth. So there is an increase in the length of the growth. That is also nothing but growth. So all these happens with the help of GH. That is growth hormone, also called as STH, somatotropic hormone it is also called as. So what is PTH, what is ACTH and what is ADH? So PTH is parathormone which is secreted from the parathyroid glands, and it maintains the calcium levels in the blood. PTH is nothing but the parathormone. It is nothing but the parathormone, and parathyroid hormone also referred as parathyroid hormone, also called as hypercalcemic hormone. Calcemic hormone, since it is concerned with the calcium levels. It increases the calcium levels in the blood. So PTH, ACTH, we already know it is adrenocorticotropic hormone it is called as, and secreted from the pituitary gland and brings about the stimulation and secretion from the adrenal gland. So it stimulates the adrenal gland to secrete the various hormones. So GH. ADH is antidiuretic hormone, so which is concerned with the absorption of water and electrolytes from the tubules of the nephron or the urinary tubules. So also called as vasopressin. Moving on to next question. Now, if a person takes large amount of water, the amount of ADH in blood will. So now what is the role of ADH? So ADH brings about the absorption of water from the urinary tubules, right? So when absorption happens, when there is dehydration in the body. Now, if a person takes large amount of water, so he is not suffering from any sort of dehydration. Okay, the amount of ADH in blood will. So when do you require ADH? To reabsorb the water, right? So there is now no need of reabsorption because the person himself is drinking abundant of water. There's not a condition of dehydration, so ADH is not required, right? So there is decreased secretions of what? ADH. So when there is dehydration, so there is requirement of water in the body. So water is reabsorbed from the primary urine or the provisional urine. So then there will be an increased secretion of ADH, right? So the right answer is there's decrease. ADH will decrease. Moving on to the next question. Which one of the following hormones though synthesized elsewhere is stored and released by the master gland? Though synthesized elsewhere is stored and released by the master gland. So master gland is the pituitary gland. So it is stored and released by the master gland, and it is synthesized elsewhere. So it is stored and released by the pituitary gland, but they are synthesized elsewhere, which is that hormone. So I told you, well, I was telling about pars nervosa, the posterior lobe. Entirely, it is under the direct control of hypothalamus. So hypothalamus is going to secrete or synthesize and secrete. Hypothalamus is going to synthesize and secrete what? Two important hormones, that is OT, oxytocin, and ADH, that is antidiuretic hormone, are synthesized and secreted by the hypothalamus, but it is stored in neurohypophysis or the posterior lobe of the pituitary gland, right? So, which are those hormones? So, either you should have OT or you should have ADH in the option. Now, prolactin? No, prolactin is a hormone which is secreted from the adenohypophysis, which is going to stimulate the mammary glands, brings about the growth of the mammary glands, and also stimulates the milk production during pregnancy in females, right? So that is not a part of the answer. The second one is antidiuretic hormone, the ADH or the vasopressin. So since ADH or antidiuretic hormone is secreted from the posterior lobe, which is synthesized and secreted from hypothalamus, but it is only stored in the neurohypophysis. So melanocyte stimulating hormone, MSH. So pars intermedia will secrete only one hormone, I told you, which is called as melanocyte stimulating hormone, which is concerned with the pigmentation of the skin, right? So luteinizing hormone or LH, I told you LH has got two different role in males and females. So in females they have a different role, and in males they have a different role. So LH in females, it is going to bring about ovulation, that is release of the secondary oocyte from the Graafian follicle on the 14th day of the menstrual cycle. You call it as ovulation, which is brought about by LH, right? And this in males, it is going to bring about the secretion of androgens from the interstitial cells or the Leydig cells, right? So it is going to secrete, it is going to stimulate the secretion of male sex hormones or the androgens, that is LH. So the right answer for this question is antidiuretic hormone. Moving on to the next question. The posterior pituitary gland is not a true endocrine gland because, once again the question is from the posterior pituitary gland, which is in the direct control of hypothalamus. Why it is not called as a true endocrine gland? So it is provided with a duct? No, the neuron endings are going to secrete the secretions. There is no duct. It is not an exocrine gland. So it cannot be the answer. It is under the regulation of hypothalamus. Yes. It secretes enzymes. So it is not going to secrete any enzyme. It only stores and releases hormones. Both of them are correct. It is under the regulation of hypothalamus. It only stores and releases hormones. But because the question is asked about the pituitary gland, so what the pituitary gland is doing? It is storing and releasing the hormones. Therefore, option 4 is the more appropriate answer for this question. Moving on to next question. MSH is produced by, we have already discussed, it is secreted from the pars intermedia or of the pituitary gland. So parathyroid gland also we have discussed, which are present inside the thyroid glands. There are masses of cells which are present inside the thyroid glands, and they secrete the hormone called as parathormone, and they are also called as hypercalcemic hormone because they increase the calcium levels in the blood, right? Moving on to next question. Ovulation is stimulated by, so I have already discussed, so ovulation is brought about by LH. So and then what is the role of estrogen? So estrogen is called as the female sex hormone, right? So it brings about the what generation and degeneration of the endometrial wall, right? Estrogens, progesterone, so secreted during pregnancy, maintains pregnancy, you can tell, and estrogen maintains menstrual cycle, you can tell. So FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, brings about the growth and in females brings about the growth and development of the follicle cells. In males, it brings about spermatogenesis. So moving on to next question, adrenocorticotropin is a hormone which is produced from ACTH is produced from the pituitary gland. So we have already discussed these things. Thyroid is under just a minute. Will let me clarify this once again. The hormones of the pituitary we will take. Pituitary gland hormones, which are those. So one is telling thyroid. Thyroid is not part of pituitary. So adrenocorticotropin ACTH is going to control the adrenal gland. Adrenal gland, also called as suprarenal gland, we also call it as ACTH, will control the adrenal gland, and FSH LH will control the gonads, will control the gonadal activity and it will act on gonads. Then TSH will control the thyroid gland, will act upon the thyroid gland. So I hope it is clear. So adrenocorticotropic hormone, tropic is a hormone which is produced from, sorry, it is not adrenal, it is pituitary. Adrenocorticotropic is a hormone which is produced from the pituitary gland. It is going to produce ACTH. The short form is ACTH and the long form is adrenocorticotropic hormone secreted from pituitary, right? So thereby it is going to control adrenal glands, right? Secreted from pituitary gland and stimulates the secretion of the adrenal gland. Next, we have thyroid, which is stimulated by TSH, which is produced once again, which is secreted by pituitary gland. Then adrenal medulla. So I told you adrenal gland, medulla is a part of the adrenal gland. The innermost part of the adrenal gland is called as adrenal medulla, which is going to secrete adrenaline and noradrenaline, also called as F3 hormone, or it is also called as emergency hormones, or it is also called as catecholamines. It is also called as catecholamines. Yes. Gonadotropic hormone is secreted by posterior part of thyroid, absolutely wrong. Interstitial cells of testis. So interstitial cells of testis is going to secrete the male sex hormone, that is androgens. Then adenohypophysis of pituitary. So the gonadotropic hormones are FSH and LH, which are secreted from adenohypophysis of pituitary, is absolutely right. So adrenal cortex, no, it will adrenal cortex will secrete, I told you, glucocorticoids and also mineralocorticoids. Moving on to the next question. In which both of the following, both pairs has correct combination? So there are different combinations given over here. We need to find out the correct combination, right? So in situ conservation, seed bank; ex situ conservation, national park. So once again, the question is coming from the second PU chapter, that is biodiversity and conservation. So in situ conservation. So in situ conservation is something where in the organisms are protected in their natural habitat itself. That is, the flora and fauna are protected or conserved in the place where they are present. So if you want to conserve or protect a tiger, the whole of the forest is protected. That is what is called as in situ conservation, also called as insight conservation. It is also called as. So conservation in the natural habitat. For that, seed bank cannot be an example. So it cannot be seed bank. but it can be national park. So the match is incorrect. Ex situ conservation. So ex situ conservation is conservation out of the natural habitat. So let us hope there is the some of the species are threatened or endangered. For example, lion is endangered, so they are removed from that habitat. They are put into a special setting where they are completely given special care and protected. That is called as ex situ conservation. And seed bank is an example for ex situ conservation, whereas national park is an example for in situ conservation. So this is a wrong combination. So the second one is in situ conservation cryopreservation. No. So cryopreservation is once again the preservation of the various gametes of animals where they are preserved below 0 degrees for a long time, and they can be utilized when they are required. So even the semen of the male organisms are also cryopreserved and they are used later whenever they are required. So that is an example for ex situ conservation. Ex situ conservation, wildlife sanctuary. So wildlife sanctuary is an example for in situ conservation but not ex situ. So wildlife sanctuaries, there are about 448 wildlife sanctuaries in India, and there are about national parks. There are about 90, 448 wildlife sanctuaries and 34 biodiversity hotspots. So in situ conservation, national park is absolutely right. Ex situ conservation, botanical garden, this is also absolutely right combination. So in situ conservation, national park, I have already told national parks, they are natural habitats. Bandipur National Park, you have heard, is an example for in situ conservation. Ex situ conservation, botanical garden. So some of the threatened and endangered species are removed from their natural habitat and they are put in special settings like botanical gardens, and they are given special care so that they do not get extinct. So therefore, this is the right combination. In the fourth, in situ conservation, tissue culture is example for ex situ conservation, and sacred groves are example for in situ conservation. So sacred groves means they are tracts of forests. They are tracts of forest which are preserved and conserved, maybe because of the fear of the deity or some god or goddess. They are that area of forest or conserved, and it is an example for in situ conservation. For example, we have so many sacred groves in Western Ghats of Karnataka and also Aravali Hills of Rajasthan, and such other examples we have. Chandar and Bastar, Chanda and Bastar of Madhya Pradesh, all these are certain examples of sacred groves. Yeah. Moving on to the next question. Which one of the following is related to ex situ conservation of threatened animals and plants? So the question is based upon ex situ conservation. So Amazon rainforest is completely a natural habitat which can be an example for in situ conservation but not ex situ. Wildlife safari parks, of course, they are examples of ex situ conservation. So wildlife safari parks, some of the wild animals are which are endangered or threatened or removed from their natural habitat. For example, if we have a lion safari, so that safari is completely for lions only to increase their number. Lion safaris are built specially for lion, or special settings made only for lion, and special care is taken to increase their number. That is wildlife safari. It can be a lion safari, it can be an elephant safari, it can be a crocodile safari, or it can be a rhino safari, or whatever it is. So biodiversity hotspots. So I have spoken about hotspots. So where there is increased species richness, increased species richness can be seen in biodiversity hotspots, and also we find a high rate of endemism. So, or excessive endemic species are found in these biodiversity hotspots, and India has got 4 biodiversity hotspots. In our textbook, they have mentioned 3 biodiversity hotspots. Total of 34 biodiversity hotspots all over the world. The Himalayan region is one of the biodiversity hotspots. So all these are this can be examples for in situ conservation. Only wildlife safari park is an example for ex situ conservation. Next, which one of the following is not used for ex situ plant conservation? So one of the method given over here is not used as ex situ plant conservation. So for plant conservation, we can use seed banks where the various seeds of different varieties of plants are preserved. You call it as a seed bank, and it is used for as preservation for the various plant species. So shifting cultivation is not a example for ex situ plant conservation. See, shifting cultivation is a type of cultivation where cultivation is shifted from one place to another place. And botanical gardens, it is an example for ex situ conservation. Field gene banks. Also, there are varieties of genes coming from the plants, various plants, and they are preserved in one particular region. You call it as gene banks. So the right answer, not an ex situ conservation, plant conservation, is shifting cultivation. Right. So moving on to the last question, we have the last question here, which is the long form, looking at the organization which publishes the red list of species. So red list is a list which is given by the IUCN. That is it makes an international survey of the various organisms and fetches different categories of organisms. So IUCN is an organization which is called as International Union for Nature and Natural Resources. IUCN is International Union for Nature and Union for Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources. We know that nature is our home, right? Therefore, we need to keep our home as it is. So, if we want to prosper, if we need to prosper, or all the organisms present on this nature needs a prosperous life, then it should be see that it is protected and conserved. So there is an international organization which is going to protect the nature or conserve the nature and also the natural resources. So IUCN conducts a survey for every 10 years on the biodiversity and classifies the organisms into 7 different categories like data deficiency, then least concerned, endangered, threatened, extinct in wild, extinct. All these are various categories on rare organisms. Like this, different categories are described in the red list and they give the names of the organisms in that particular list. So IUCN WWF is Wildlife Fund. It is Wildlife Fund, it is called as. And UNED, it is one of the Spanish organization internal to Spanish, something concerned with University of Distance Education. And ICFRE, that is ICFRE, is an Indian Council of Forestry Research and Education. Indian Council for Forestry Research and Education is ICFRE. So that is all about the discussion of almost we have completed the discussion of the 6th split. So 2 chapters we have discussed in detail. I hope this discussion might have helped you to answer or able to answer some of the MCQs of these chapters. Hope this was a helpful discussion. Hope have followed. All of you have followed this. So take care of your health. Have a good day. Thank you.